Well, thank you very much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I have to say, we have been really busy on the nutrition front, but in my own life personally, it wasn't always so. I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and I don't know if any of you have seen the movie, but my grandfather was a cattle rancher, and his father was a cattle rancher, and his father was, in fact, as far back as I can trace. And my own father was in the cattle business, but he didn't like it, and he left, and he went to medical school. But he spent his whole life treating diabetes in Fargo. And I never once heard him say that a case of diabetes had been reversed. He felt it was a difficult path, that things kept getting gradually worse and worse and worse. And I'd like to share with you something quite a bit different. For me, I have to say, we still ate like we were in the cattle business. Every day it was roast beef, baked potatoes, and corn, except for special occasions when it was roast beef, baked potatoes, and peas. And when you look around the world, you see something really very different. I'd like to take a lesson from Japan. The dietary staple in Japan is not beef. It's really rice, right? Rice and noodles and that kind of thing. And if you look at the foods that they eat, they're not at all similar to what I grew up on, and maybe not similar to what you grew up on either. But if you look at diabetes prevalence in Japan, in adults over the age of 40, prior to 1980, very rare, 1 to 5% of the population. Not a lot of diabetes. But what happened to Japan around 1980? The westernization started to occur. And these are not traditional Japanese foods, are they? But they became very popular. And so the fat content of the Japanese diet, can you see this? The fat content was going up. It's not as bad as ours, but it's rising year by year. And carbohydrates started to fall. In other words, they're eating less rice, less noodles, less vegetables, more meat, more dairy products. And if you look at the Japanese waistline, the top line here is overweight. There's more and more of that. The bottom line is obesity. Not a lot of obesity yet, but you get the idea. The population is getting heavier, eating fattier diets. And then if you look at diabetes prevalence, prior to 1980, 1 to 5%. 1990, 11 to 12%. So this shows us really two things. The first thing is the common wisdom that carbohydrate causes diabetes is not right, is it? Because if so, they would have had a lot of it before and none now. It's the opposite. When they were eating starchy foods, they did fine. When the Western diet came in, then they're in trouble. The second thing this shows us is the role of genetics is smaller than we might have thought. And this is sort of like the Pima experience, that the genes are there, but the genes for diabetes are not like the genes for the color of your eyes or the color of your hair. Those are dictators. If they say blue eyes, brown hair, you can't argue. But the genes for diabetes are more like committees. They make suggestions, and you can argue with them. You can say, I don't think I want to have diabetes. And those genes sit like seeds on the desert floor, and nothing happens unless it rains, and then they sprout. So if you're not following the diet that makes them come alive, you may never get the diabetes. Is this making sense? Yes. Okay. So, well, let's take a look at the United States. Growing up in Fargo, as I said, it was a meaty diet, and my summer job was at McDonald's. I used to finish up and go home and wring the grease out of my clothes. If you look at the meat intake in the United States, I published a paper in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition last year. The Department of Agriculture started tracking what people eat back in 1909. And at that time, your average American in a year ate 123.9 pounds of meat. One person in a year. But what happened? Well, it's gone up, hasn't it? And as of about 2007, we were over 200 pounds. And what that means is every person is getting about 75 pounds extra meat every year compared to a century ago. Now, it's not really red meat that is the increase recently. Any ideas what it is? It's been a big increase in chicken. Chicken has gone way, way up. Why? Because, well, that must be health food. It's got to be lower in fat and cholesterol. I got to tell you, Americans now eat more than 1 million chickens per hour. It's about 10 billion per year. And we're convinced it's health food. We are in the worst shape we have ever been in. Let me say a special word of condemnation for cheese. 100 years ago, your average person in a year's time, in a year, ate 3.8 pounds of cheese. We were just not into cheese. But what happened? Well, around 1960 or thereabouts, the fast food chains came in, and they would like to put a little cheese under every bun lid that they could. And then, on the heels of that, pizza became popular. And how convenient. You can connect your restaurant to somebody's home by a phone wire. You got dinner in half an hour. Or you can pick it up on the way home. You can get it frozen. Kids will eat it in schools. The government says, you know what? The dairy industry will love us because we can buy up cheese and put it in schools, and everybody will be happy, except for your waistline. But other than that, you're fine. Now, the problem with that is that cheese is, this is going to be on the test, cheese is 70% fat. 70% fat. And the main type of fat in the cheese is something called saturated fat. Are you familiar with that? Saturated fat means solid fat. When I was a kid, I used to go down to the kitchen where my mom was making breakfast, and she would be cooking bacon. She'd take the bacon out of the pan, and she'd put it carefully on paper towels to drain. And that hot grease that was left in the hot pan, she'd carefully lift up the pan and pour it into a jar to save it. And she took that jar, and she did not put it in the refrigerator because she knew that what happens as it cools down? It turns into a waxy solid. It solidifies. That's a sign that it's really high in saturated fat. And she just put it in the cupboard. The next day, she'd pull it down, spoon it back into the pan. She'd fry eggs in it. It's amazing that any of her kids live to adulthood, as I think of it now. But that saturated fat, that's the one that's got your cardiologist either nervous, or if they're paid per procedure, then they're delighted. But that's what cheese has in it. That's why cheese is solid, right? It's not pourable. It's this big chunk of waxy stuff, very high in saturated fat. Okay, am I depressing everybody? Okay, I'll write Prozac prescriptions at the end of the lecture, but this is very important. As of 2005, we were at 31 pounds of cheese per year. As of 2011, we are at about 34. So my point is this. Your average American, compared to a century ago, is eating 30 pounds more cheese this year, next year, the year after that. Okay, one last thing. Sugar. The blue line that you see there that's cane sugar and beet sugar, and that's falling. But we are more than making up for it with what? High fructose corn syrup. That's right, that's the green line. So you put it together, and if you take total sugar, that's the red line at the top, and it's not your imagination. We're eating more sugar than ever. It could be 40, 50 pounds more compared to 2 years ago. So here's my point. Your average American in a year's time is eating 75 pounds more meat, 30 pounds more cheese, 40, 50 pounds more sugar this year, again next year, again the year after that. Why do we have an obesity problem? I don't know. I guess we're not exercising enough. This is what worries me. This is what we tell children. You need to sweat more. The problem is you're playing those video games, and so you should get out and exercise more. Now, that's true. Kids do need to exercise more. But to exercise off the calories in 6 chicken nuggets, a child would have to run 3.5 miles. And if there was a soda with it, that's another 2.5 miles, and a typical order of fries, 2 miles more. So in theory, a child can exercise off all the calories we are shoving into them, but they would have no time to do anything else. The problem we have, the reason for the obesity epidemic, has virtually nothing to do with exercise. Exercise is great. I'm all for it. But that is not why we are heavy. It is entirely on the input side of the equation. That is what has changed dramatically. And we will never solve this problem by guilting our children into sweating. We will never solve this problem by having government programs called Let's Move if all they want you to do is wiggle your rear end and not change what is on your plate and what we are feeding to children in schools, okay? We lie about this, and the medical profession, all of us, must spread honesty about what we are facing. Because if we don't do that, we're condemning the next generation to something that we have no business forcing them into. Is this making sense? Yes. Okay, all right. Let's look at what has happened because of these diet changes. There's North Dakota, where I grew up. It needs a little more tofu, I think. Anyway, you get the idea. In North Dakota, it was less than 4% of the population had diabetes back in 1994. The darker blue, that's Louisiana, Mississippi, more than 6%. But that was 1994. Our diets were changing. So here's 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000. Diabetes just is coming in as the years go by. And then starting in 2006, we needed whole new colors for some political reason, I think. And then, but you get the idea. The map is changing year by year. So we don't really notice a big change in what we're eating from one year to the next. But if you step back just a little bit, we are in completely uncharted territory with body weight, with childhood obesity, and with diabetes prevalence. Now, researchers have said, well, who is doing better? And there was a fascinating study published by the American Diabetes Association in 2009. They looked at a group of people who were all Seventh-day Adventists. And the reason they studied Adventists, I was not terribly familiar with the Adventist religion before I got involved in research, but they offer a wonderful, well, really a gold mine for researchers. And that is, church teachings say you shouldn't smoke, or drink alcohol, or use caffeine, or eat meat. And almost all Adventists are really good at the first three of those. But they're not necessarily so good with the don't eat meat part. And so it sets up a perfect natural experiment of health-conscious non-smokers, non-drinkers who vary in their diets, and that allows you to compare. So this was published in 2009, and they looked at different groups. The orange bar on the left is meat eaters, non-vegetarians. And what we're tracking is body mass index, BMI. Are you familiar with BMI? BMI is your weight, but it's adjusted for your height. And so a healthy BMI is below 25. And above 25, we say overweight. So non-vegetarians were at 28.8, a little bit into the overweight area, which is where average Americans are. And then there were semi-vegetarians, meaning they ate meat but no more than once a week. They were a little thinner. And then there were pesco-vegetarians. What's that? Okay, so they didn't eat any meat except for fish. And they were thinner. And lacto-ovo-vegetarians, lacto meaning milk, ovo meaning eggs. Okay, lacto-ovo, so they didn't eat any meat at all, or fish, but they ate milk and eggs. And they were skinnier. And then look at that blue bar. Those are people following a vegan diet. Now, a vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. But what that means is they're not having any animal products at all. And they are actually the only group that's smack in the middle of the healthy diet range, the healthy weight range. So the reason the American Diabetes Association published this, though, was because of these figures, which are the diabetes prevalence. Same gradient, but just much more dramatic. So the meat eaters have a lot, the vegan people have almost none, and the other groups just slot in between. So I look at this in reverse. Let's say you've got a person who's following a totally plant-based diet. They're eating grains and beans and vegetables and fruits. They're going to be thin. They're going to very unlikely to have diabetes. But they decide one day, I think I'll have an egg and maybe some milk. Their risk goes up and their waistline gets a little bigger. And let's add some fish. Well, they get a little heavier and their diabetes rate takes a jump. Let's add meat, but not too often. Their risk goes up again. Well, why don't we have meat every day, like everybody else is doing, and then you're at the top of both risks. So the more the animal products come in, the heavier we get, and the higher our risk of diabetes. Okay. So, by the way, you don't have to be Adventist. You could be European. And we see the same thing. This is men, this is women. And once again, the meat eaters are the heaviest, the vegans are the skinniest, and the other groups are between the two. Okay, so my research team said, fine, let's put this to the test. Let's do a randomized trial in people who never thought about doing a plant-based diet before. And so it was 64 women. They were all moderately to severely overweight. They were all past the age of menopause, and every single one of them felt really just stuck because they had done Atkins and South Beach, and they had done Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers, and nothing seemed to really be the answer. So what we said was, let's do this. Let's eat off the power plate. And what this means is we're going to have unlimited amounts of fruits and grains and legumes. Do you know what legumes are? Beans, peas, lentils, things in a pod. and vegetables. And that's what we're going to eat. These are our raw materials. And we had 2 rules. The rules were everything had to be vegan, meaning no animal products. And we kept oils really low. Now, we did that for a reason. A lot of people have the idea that vegetable oils are healthier. They are healthier than chicken fat. But if you take that oil and you go glug, 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 all over your salad, all over your pasta, you're getting a lot of calories. And do you know how many calories you're getting? A gram of fat. If I take a thimble and I pour fat into it, that holds maybe 2 or 3 grams. But 1 gram of fat holds 9 calories. So it could be chicken fat, it could be beef fat, it could be any kind of, it could be olive oil. Any kind of fat has 9 calories. You with me? But carbohydrate, the much maligned carbohydrate, the slice of bread that people look at in horror thinking it's going to make them heavy, carbohydrate has 4 calories per gram. So that's why people in Japan were skinny, because they were eating all that carbohydrate and they weren't eating the fat until McDonald's brought it over. Okay? So, you with me now? I want to make sure you're with me. This is very important. How many calories are there in a gram of beef fat? 9, that's right. How about chicken fat? 9. How about fat from fish? Still 9, that's right. How about peanut oil? Olive oil? Extra virgin olive oil? Extra virgin olive oil that cost me $25 for this bottle? Still 9? That's right. Okay, how about 1040 motor oil? Don't try this at home, but if you did cook with it, it has 9 calories per gram. So 2 rules. It actually does. 2 rules. No animal products, so it's vegan. Keep the oils low. That's all we asked them to do. We did not ask them to count calories or limit calories. We did not ask them to restrict portions. We asked them specifically not to change their exercise patterns because we're zeroing in on diet. And a typical day's meals would be something like blueberry pancakes, maybe oatmeal with cinnamon and raisins. They could have a half cantaloupe. They could have rye toast, but no butter on the toast, right? They could have chili, but it would be a bean chili or chunky vegetable chili. They could have all the fruit they wanted. If somebody said, I want to have 25 bananas today, that was not a violation of the rules. And if they wanted to go Italian, maybe minestrone, lentil soup, you could have your linguine with artichoke hearts and seared oyster mushrooms, marinara sauce, whatever. You could have a glass of wine before, you could have the espresso after. It's the easiest diet you ever did. But the rules are you keep the animal products out and keep the oils really low. Those are the only rules. Now, I have to tell you, there are certain humiliating things that occur in the life of a researcher sometimes. We had a discussion group where everybody got together every week to see how they were doing on their diet and get instructions and cooking classes, which, by the way, is a terrific model. If any of you work in clinics, what you do is once the clinic closes down at 5 o'clock, the lights turn off and everybody goes home, sneak back in, turn the lights on at 5:01, and invite anybody in your clinic who's got diabetes or a weight problem to come in, sit around in a room, just have one person lead a discussion every Tuesday at 5 o'clock, and you're going to change their lives. Because you give people just that little bit of group support. And that's what we do in every research study. Everybody comes in once a week. They share stories, they share successes, they share challenges, and they work together. And if you don't do that, if you just say, hi, here's your diet, come back in 6 months, failure. Very few people will do that. Okay, so on about week 3 of this research study, one of the participants came in to the group, and she said, Dr. Barnard, I found a treat that I can have on your low-fat vegan diet. I'm thinking, uh-oh, I wonder what this is. She opens her purse, and she pulls out a pack of Twizzlers. Do you know these things? They sell them at the 7-Eleven. It's these red licorice twisty things. And she said, read the label. And I did, and you know what? It's true. There are no animal products in them. There are no added oils. It's sugary, starchy, artificially colored junk. And she made sure that everybody in the study knew that Twizzlers are perfectly okay. You can eat all you want in Dr. Barnard's research study. But the thing about research is you set your rules and you live with them. So my vegan, low-fat, Twizzler-fueled research participants came back week after week. And after about 14 weeks, your average person had lost 13 pounds, which is okay. We tracked them for a year and then another year. They were thinner at a year. They were thinner again at 2 years. In other words, unlike every other diet they had been on, where you lose the weight and then it comes back, and then you go on again and you lose weight and it comes back, and you end up ratcheting up worse. Unlike every other diet they had ever been on, the weight loss was a one-way street. And here's why. You're not hungry. But you're eating all you want every day, so you don't have that I want to eat the sofa feeling that you get with typical calorie counting diets. Okay, so let me put a human face on this. This is Nancy. Nancy had a weight problem. She also had type 2 diabetes. And she began this diet, and she said, easy. For the first time, I don't have to count carbohydrate grams. I don't have to have a calorie restriction. She lost 40 pounds over about a year. She stopped all of her diabetes medicine. She was on metformin and a sulfonylurea. But one other thing. Not only did her diabetes improve dramatically, but she also noticed something else. She was home cooking one night. She was making some spaghetti. And she got a jar of spaghetti sauce, and she just cracked open the lid and poured it into a pan. And she suddenly realized she had not opened one of these jars in years. She had rheumatoid arthritis. If any of you have rheumatoid arthritis, you know that it starts at the base of your thumbs, and it spreads to the other joints. And who's ever making those vacuum-packed jars, they are sadists, because you cannot open them. And she just realized her pain was gone. She thought back, when did this happen? So around the time she changed her diet. She came running into our center and said, my diabetes is better, I'm losing weight, and why is my arthritis gone? And I told her that I wrote a book in 1998 called Foods That Fight Pain. And I did that because I made a chance discovery that menstrual pain, cramps, are related to food. And I know you probably have never heard that before. I won't give you the long reason, but I published the results in a journal called Obstetrics and Gynecology in 2000, based on research that we did. And to make a long story short, foods affect estrogen levels and estrogen activity. And it hit me that cramps are nothing but the excessive thickening of the lining of the uterus, which at the end of the month, the disappointed uterus discovers we are not pregnant again, and it sheds that lining, and as it does so, maladjusted chemicals called prostaglandins cause crampy pain. And if you have healthier foods, which I can show you, it's really easy to do, high fiber, very low fat foods, the body has less estrogen activity, less endometrial thickening, less prostaglandins, less cramps, or none. PMS gets better too. So anyway, I got all excited about this. And I thought, it's probably not just menstrual cramps. What about migraine headache? What about lower back pain? What about rheumatoid arthritis? And I found very strong, decisive dietary links for all of them. So I thought, this is really important, because what do we tell people with rheumatoid arthritis in our clinics? We say, start ibuprofen. And if that's not enough, why don't we start prednisone? And if that causes a weight problem, well, maybe you can just exercise some more. And then if that's not working, I'm going to start you on methotrexate. And yes, if you go online, you'll see that that's a chemotherapy drug, but stick with it. Okay, there may be people who need that. But 50 to 70% of people get better when you change their diet. But by the way, don't take this on faith. If this is the first time you're hearing it, you're probably thinking this is crazy. Don't take this on faith. There are certain foods that trigger. If you get into the joint space of a person who's got rheumatoid arthritis, it doesn't look nice. It's inflamed. It's inflamed for a reason, because there are antibodies that are causing this inflammatory process. Well, antibodies are protein torpedoes that your body is making. Why is it making them? It makes antibodies to attack viruses, to attack bacteria, to attack cancer cells. And something is eliciting it. So that something has to be a foreign protein. What's the foreign protein? Well, it's not a virus in this case. It's not bacteria. The most common one is dairy. The most common one is dairy products. See, you see, a cow figured that the milk was going to be for a calf. And Mother Nature never figured that a primate would drink the milk of a cow. And some people do okay with it. But for others, they make these little antibodies to it. The antibodies attack their own synovial membranes. They get all inflamed. They start taking ibuprofen. They start taking prednisone. They start taking methotrexate. Years later, they die, and no one ever figured out what it was about. So don't take it on faith. There are other triggers, too. It could be white potatoes, it could be eggs, it could be meat, it could be corn. There's a very simple way you figure it out. It doesn't help everybody, but 50 or 70% of people improve or it's flat out gone. And if you ever want to see the most grateful patient, make their pain go away. Okay, this is Vance. Vance had, Vance's father was dead by age 30. Vance was a policeman in Washington. At 31, he was diagnosed with diabetes. At 36 or 37, he came in to see us. And we said, let's try this plant-based diet. And what we are reasoning was that it wasn't carbohydrate that causes diabetes. What we reasoned was that the buildup of fat inside the muscle cells is causing his insulin not to work anymore. It's causing a condition we call insulin resistance. And we can get that fat out if we take it off the plate, at least to a degree. So that was, the National Institutes of Health actually did make an exception to their usual rule of not funding research, and they gave us a very nice, generous check to put this to the test. And we've published 6 or 7 or 8 peer-reviewed papers on this. But Vance's story is he began a vegan diet. He lost 60 pounds over about a year. He stopped his diabetes medicines. His diabetes was no longer detectable by any blood test. Now, don't get me wrong. If he went back to his old diet, I'm quite sure the diabetes would become evident. But it's as if it just went away for him. And, oh, by the way, when I asked his permission to tell his story, he said, make sure you let everybody know that my erectile dysfunction went away too. So, okay. That may not be why he's smiling, but anyway, it's a good thing, okay? All right, so by now you might be thinking, wait a minute. How does this work? I just said that you can eat all the pancakes you want and you're going to lose weight. I mean, that doesn't sound possible. But let me walk you through how it works. The first thing is a real no-brainer. When you're eating only vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans and you're not eating animal products, every single thing that you're putting in your mouth has fiber in it. Now, fiber is this boring nutrition word, but it's really powerful stuff. Fiber is plant roughage. It has virtually no calories, but it fills you up. When you eat it, it holds a little water in your stomach. So your stomach starts thinking, we're getting full now, when the truth is you haven't had so many calories. But now, Velveeta is different. Velveeta is not from a plant, so it doesn't have any plant roughage. It has 0 fiber. So every calorie in that whole Velveeta box, you get the full advantage of it. And same with meat, and same with eggs. They're not from plants. They have 0 fiber. You get all the calories. But on the other hand, when you're eating beans and vegetables and these healthy foods, they've got lots of fiber. And you are going to swear that you're eating as much as before, because I just said you can eat blueberry pancakes and chili and spaghetti. But the truth is, if I actually ask you to write up everything you're eating, and I analyze it, you're eating 200 or 300 calories a day less. You're thinking I'm making this up, but you're eating less just because you fill up a little bit sooner because of all the fiber. Okay? So the second thing, though, is you get an after-meal burn, and I want to explain this. As the years go by, you might feel like you're burning calories slower. You know what I'm talking about? When I was 12, I could eat anything, and I'd never gain an ounce. But now, I just look at food. I gain weight. My metabolism is slowing down. It's not your imagination. It is slowing down. And it's at its absolute slowest in the morning when you're waking up. So you come into my laboratory, and I'm going to lay you down on an exam table. And I'll put over your head and your shoulders a little see-through canopy. And as you lie there and you're breathing in and out, I'm analyzing how much oxygen you're consuming minute by minute, how much carbon dioxide you're putting out. And I can then calculate your metabolism, how fast you're burning calories. Real simple. And so I can tell you that you really are burning calories slowly. So after you've been lying there, I'm going to say, let's have breakfast. So we eat breakfast. And as that happens, your body starts absorbing the nutrients. So they're going into your cells, and your cells are starting to burn it up a little bit. Your metabolism is speeding up in the post-meal period for about 3 hours. Okay? However, after people have been on a plant-based diet for a little while, we notice that this curve changes. It goes up. You burn calories about 16% faster It's what we call the thermic effect of food. The idea is that for about 3 hours after the meal, you're burning calories a little bit faster than before. And when people have been on this diet, they really get a burn, a bigger burn for about 3 hours after the meal. So why do people lose weight on this diet? The first is they're pushing away from the table a little sooner, feeling very satisfied. The second is their body is burning calories 3 hours faster after breakfast, after lunch, after dinner, every day. Now, 16% is not a lot. But what if you got on the road between here and Detroit, and you pushed your accelerator down about 16% more? You could explain to the police officer that this is all part of a research study and to see if 16% really made a big difference. It really can. So let me go one step further and show you why your body's burning calories faster. I'm going to stick a needle in your leg and pull out one muscle cell. And that's a muscle cell. And the reason I'm showing you muscles, a muscle cell, is because your muscles are your calorie burners. You've heard people say this? Your muscle mass, that's what really burns a lot of calories. It does. And here's what does it. See that little dot? There's another one. Those are called mitochondria. Remember that from your high school biology? Mitochondria they are your calorie burners. They are taking sugar, they're taking fat, they're turning them into energy. And you've got a lot of them in your cell. And the more you have, the more calories you burn. The problem is you've got something else there. You've got fat. And see, oh, it's growing. Look. And now, doctors don't like words like fat because it's only got one syllable. But we're going to call it intramyocellular lipid. By the way, intra means inside. Myo means muscle. Cellular means cellular. Lipid means fat. So intramyocellular lipid is fat inside the muscle cell. Whether you're heavy or whether you're thin, it accumulates in your muscles. Now, why is it there? Well, your body uses it as an alternative fuel source, and it grows up real big. But the problem is fat in your cells slows down your after-meal calorie burn. Let me explain that. You have a fatty meal, whether it's a donut or a piece of ham or a chicken leg, and your body goes, hooray, this is fantastic. I can take that fat, stick it inside my muscle cells, and keep it there for a while, because we could have a famine any day, and if we do, I'm ready. Now, you can explain to your body that we have not had a famine anywhere around Toledo in a long time. But your body was programmed many, many, many years ago when famine was a realistic possibility. You got the very same DNA as our very distant ancestors did. So a fatty meal is still prized. And the fat goes into your muscle cells, it stays there, and as it enters, your body turns down the production of mitochondria. Your body turns down the production of mitochondria in order to not burn that fat too quickly. Because if we burn it up, we're not going to be ready for the next famine. So my metabolism seems slower. It's getting slower all the time. Why is that? Because your body is changing based on the foods that we're feeding it. This is all pre-programmed in our DNA. You can't change your DNA, but what you can change is what you're putting into the cell. So if fat in cells slows down your after-meal calorie burn, what do I want to do? I want to get the animal products out of my diet, keep the oils low, because a gram of fat has how many calories? 9. And what happens? If I make these diet changes, bing, 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 very quickly, the fat content diminishes. My mitochondria say, okay, I guess you really don't need to worry about that so much. They give you back your energy. And getting the fat out of your diet boosts your after-meal calorie burn. This is a no-brainer. Why are vegans that skinniest little bar? Why do they have very little diabetes? Because diabetes is caused by that fat interfering with insulin getting sugar into the cell. And as long as I'm treating diabetes by counting grams of bread and rice, I'm not getting to the cause. The cause is to get the junk out of the cell, and that's fat. Is this making sense? Okay. So I'd like to talk to you about your car insurance. This is Geico. When I look out my office window, that's actually what I see. Geico's national headquarters is right near my office. And there are 2,500 people working in there. And every time any one of them goes on a blood pressure medicine, or a diabetes medicine, or cholesterol medicines, or sees the doctor, or has an x-ray, do you know who pays? Geico pays. And so they got the idea that if everybody who worked there was on a vegan diet, we'd clean up. And so I worked with Geico. We started in 2007. We said, let's do a study. Let's introduce a vegan diet in that building. And by introduce, I mean this. You can have bacon and eggs for breakfast, but let's also have an oatmeal bar. And you can have the greasy cheeseburger for lunch, but let's have the veggie burger and the portobello sandwich and a nice salad bar. And in addition, let's have a discussion group for anybody who says, you know, I'd like to try this. I want to do this. Let's have a discussion group where every week they can come in at noon, and we'll talk, and I'll bring in a cooking instructor, and we'll sit around the room, we'll compare notes. And we had 68 people who said, you know, I think I want to join that group. And in Fredericksburg, Virginia, we had a similar group that said, you can weigh us, you can check our cholesterols, just like those people, but we're not going to make any diet change. We'll be your control group. So that's what we did. And by the way, I have to tell you, there were a few missteps along the way. It was a new thing. What can I say? But eventually they figured it out. And we did weigh everybody, and the biggest weight loss we had was 46 pounds between July and December. Now, some people dropped out, and they didn't lose anything. They might have gained weight. But your average person lost about 11 pounds. And at Fredericksburg, they didn't lose anything. And their waist circumference, they got skinnier. Well, let me show you. These are my two worst participants. This is Hillary and Bruce. They came to every discussion group, but they sat in the back of the room. And they talked the whole time. I could have the world's greatest cooking instructor really showing how to make healthy food, but they would gaze into each other's eyes, they would chatter, they were paying no attention. And I wondered why they were even there. But you know, you can misjudge people. And I had misjudged them. I mean, they were talking a lot, and they were kind of distracting. But the truth is, they were very much into this. They were talking about what groceries are we going to pick up on the way home, and what are we going to make that her parents will want to eat that's also vegan, and how are we going to make a vegan Thanksgiving for her whole family. They were completely into it. And a year later, they sent me this picture. And Bruce sent me this picture. He sent it to me for two reasons. The first is they've lost a lot of weight. He's lost 100 pounds. She's lost 85 pounds. But the other reason is he explained to me, he said, when I was heavy, I wanted to exercise. But you know what? It hurts to exercise. If you're carrying an extra 100 pounds, your knees hurt, your feet hurt. It's tough, and it hurts you. The way he explains it, he says, I didn't want to go to the gym. I didn't want to go slogging down the road and have everybody see me jiggling everywhere, was the way he put it. He said, I felt humiliated. The whole thing was a losing proposition. But as they went on their diet, what happens? The fiber satisfies their appetite, so they think they're eating as much as before, but they're not. They're eating less. Their weight's coming down. Their after-meal metabolism does what? It starts going up. So just day by day, week by week, the weight comes off. And once you've lost weight, what happens? You feel like maybe we could go for a walk today. Why don't we pick up the pace? How about if we go for a run? How about if we join a half marathon? That's what those little squares are. And the reason that's so important is that when we try to lose weight, part of it is physical. We might lose weight, we might fail, we might start gaining weight. But there's a big psychological issue, and that is the diet is harder than we thought. Is this not true? We go through it, and we're doing okay for a while, but then we discover, I can't quite stick with it. And other people seem to do okay, but for me, the temptation just lures me away. And we start to beat ourselves up. We think, there's just something wrong. I just don't have willpower like other people do. And we start to spread this to other aspects of our lives. Not only can I not lose weight, not only can I not conquer my health problems, but I probably don't have the willpower to follow through on other aspects of my life, my relationships. We beat ourselves up, and we memorize lies about ourselves. I'm calling them lies because it has nothing to do with you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. There's a lot wrong with diets that say, go hungry every day. You need 1,500 calories to feel satisfied. From now on, just eat 1,000. You need 200. You need 2,000 calories. So now just eat 1,500. That gets old by Wednesday. You can't do that. You have to be superhuman to do that. And there's no reason to beat ourselves up, but that's exactly what we do. And when the diet says, wait a minute, stop that, let me take over, and the weight comes off on its own automatically, you're healing physically, but we're also unlearning all that junk that we got stuck in our brain. And we stop passing it along to other people. We stop guilting other people, and we start forgiving ourselves. And that's what we need to do. Okay, so the power plate, fruits, grains, legumes, vegetables, these are just our raw ingredients. And by the way, we sent this to the Department of Agriculture, USDA, in 2009. And I sent it to them because the pyramid is a nice shape, but it requires an abstraction from the pyramid onto your plate. I said, let's just start with the plate and make it real simple. And did you see what they put out earlier this year? Now, I'm not taking any credit for this, but it does look similar. Okay, so how do I get complete nutrition? You need protein, but there's plenty of protein in beans and grains and vegetables. You don't need to carefully combine them. Broccoli doesn't want to brag, but it's 30% protein. Broccoli is 30% protein, 30% of its calories. I mean, that's why a meat eater, where do they get their protein? From a cow. The cow's a vegan. Okay, now, calcium is an issue, but it's a real easy issue. Greens and beans, green leafy vegetables, beans, a lot of calcium. One exception, spinach has a lot of calcium, but it's poorly absorbed. But broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, collards, very high absorption. Vitamin B12 is an important issue. You need it for healthy nerves, healthy blood. The healthiest source actually is a supplement. The Department of Ag, or the federal government, the Institute of Medicine, said that everybody should be taking a B12 supplement if you're over the age 50. Frankly, everybody ought to be taking a B12 supplement. It's in every multiple vitamin you ever took. It's in fortified foods. It's in little pink pills. The absorption from pills, from the supplements, is much better than the absorption from foods, especially if you're on an acid blocker or you're on metformin. Your absorption is going to be bad. So protein, a non-issue. Calcium, an easy issue. B12, you just make sure that there's either fortified foods or a supplement. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about, let me skip that. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about just is how I get from where I am now to be on a healthy diet. Because you might think, I'll bet it would work, but I can't imagine actually doing this. So the first step is don't change your diet. Take a week, maybe 2 weeks. And during that period of time, our job is to just go shopping. Try out things. So get some recipes and see which ones you like. And what I do is I take a piece of paper and I write breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. And over the week, my assignment is to fill it in with things that I actually like. So for breakfast, maybe oatmeal, but I got to top it with some cinnamon or raisins or strawberries or peaches or something. Pancakes, that works. Maybe bran cereal with almond milk, oat milk, rice milk. We're shopping. We're just trying out different things to see what we like. Every day I'm having Jimmy Dean sausage. Well, now I got to go to the store and try Gimme Lean sausage. And that's the vegetarian version. See how it is. So you fill out your list. And once you know what you actually like, that happens to be vegan and low in fat, now think about restaurants. Can I do a vegan diet at an Italian place? Yeah, sure. They'll make me a nice salad. They'll make me pasta fagioli or minestrone. They'll top my spaghetti with wild mushrooms or tomatoes or arrabbiata sauce. How about if I'm at a Mexican place? Will that work? Easy, sure. They'll make me a bean burrito or veggie fajitas or beans and rice. How about Chinese? Okay, real simple. So the idea is when I'm out, how about fast food, by the way? Well, Subway? Okay, sure. Give me the lettuce, give me the tomatoes, give me the olives, give me the pickles, give me the jalapeno peppers. Put some red wine vinegar on top. They'll toast it for you. You can go to Taco Bell, the bean burrito instead of the meat taco. This is not the pinnacle of culinary art, but if that's where you are, here are some choices. So once you know what you're going to eat that works for you, that fits the guidelines, then the next step is a 3-week test drive. No long-term commitment. I'm just gonna try it and see how it goes for me. And two things will happen. The first is you're gonna feel better. The weight starts coming down, your blood sugar starts coming down, your blood pressure starts improving. But the other thing that happens is your tastes start to change. And you're not gonna believe me, but how many of you ever switched from whole milk to skim milk? Let me see hand. Okay, when you did, what was the skim milk like at the beginning? Watery? Doesn't even look right. It's kind of blue. How many of you got used to it? Okay, when you got used to it, did you ever go back and taste the whole milk again? What was that like? It's too thick, right? It tastes like cream, or it's almost like paint. Well, wait a minute. You didn't get away from it for any taste reason. You just did it for health. But while you lowered the fat intake, your taste buds said, da-da-da-da-da. They started ratcheting down their taste expectation for fat. And then you can't go back. So if you do a vegan diet, the first week it does seem light. You're going to think, got to acquire a taste for folk music now. I probably need to wear tie-dye to fit in. But the second week it starts to make sense. And the third week, after you're done with 3 weeks, if you went back and you ate a double bacon cheeseburger, your taste would say, are you kidding? We found all these other great things. Why do you want to go back to that pedestrian, boring food? So your taste will actually start to expand. You'll find new products, new recipes, new books, new ways of thinking about your body. And none of this, you're not going to predict where your voyage will end. You just get it started, try 3 weeks, and just see. Now, the last thing I want to tell you is this is an optional tip, and this is transition foods. My mother taught me this. My mother, living in Fargo with my father and their litter of 5 children, my parents were happy and healthy, and except when I got out of medical school and I was visiting home, I discovered my mom had a high cholesterol. So I was talking to her about what a plant-based diet could do and how Dean Ornish had shown that you can actually reverse heart disease, and no. I noticed she was paying no attention. So I gave her some books and whatever, and a year later, I was, how's it going? She didn't open them. She's paying no attention. So, well, let's give it another try. So I'm giving my mother a little bit more details about this and whatever. She's paying no attention. I thought, this is not good. You know, I've been funded by the National Institutes of Health. I do clinical trials. I've got a PBS show. I got 2 of them, actually, and my mother, my own mother, is paying no attention to me. Anyway, one day I was looking at our family photo album, and I realized what's going on. I am my mother's 3rd-born child. Are any of you 3rd-borns? Your parents ever pay any attention to anything you ever said? Listen, the bitter truth comes out when you open the family photo album. There's lots of pages of number 1. There are many, some pictures are number 2. But to find you, you've got to look in the index. Because your parents, they know what a dribbling toddler is like. They're not really paying attention to much of anything you're doing. And you can look your mother in the eye and say, Mother, you have atherosclerosis. You've got hypercholesterolemia. She thinks it's cute, you know, big words. She's not going to take your advice. She's not really paying any attention. So my mother sits down with her physician. And he says, it's time for you to start a medicine. I'm going to start you on a statin drug. And I want you to take this, and this will bring your cholesterol under control. And she says, okay, fine. How long do I need to take it for? He said, I don't think you get what I'm saying. I want you to take this medicine. It'll control your cholesterol, but you have to take it every day forever, I mean, for the rest of your life. She says, what? I've got to take it forever for this to work? How much does it cost? You know, I'm not sure I want to do that. She goes home and she picks up a book that I wrote called Food for Life. And Neal said, if I make these recipes, my cholesterol should fall. My mom does it. My mother starts a vegan diet. She does it for 7 weeks. She goes back to the doctor. The doctor gets a blood sample, sends it to the lab. When it's done, he walks into the exam room. He sits down with her. He looks at my mother. He looks at the lab slip. He says, I need you to come back next week. We've got a problem with our laboratory, and we'll get this sorted out. She says, what is it? She says, there's been a reduction in your cholesterol of 80 points, and that's physically not possible in this time frame. Do I need medicine, she says. He says, well, if this were real, you wouldn't need medicine, but it's obviously a mistake. And so we'll get the machines fixed, come on back, we'll start your prescriptions, you'll be fine. She says, I get it. Thank you, goodbye. My mother goes home, she calls me up and says, Neal, why didn't you tell me about this before? So, anyhow, see, now my mother's got religion. She's decided the whole world needs to know about this vegan diet because you don't need medicine. It solves your problems. So she sets her sights on my dad, and she's going to veganize my dad. But my dad grew up in a cattle ranch. He's not going to do this veg and political diet thing that my mother's all into. So my father, however, was born in 1925. And all men born in 1925 have one thing in common. They don't know where the kitchen is. My father's been at the same table, and when he's hungry, the food, like, it just comes. And when he's done, the plates go. And you stick around 3 or 4 more hours, it all starts again. And my mother takes full advantage of this. She goes to the store, she gets a good bread. She gets some Italian tomatoes and slices them up, and romaine lettuce and Dijon mustard, which in Fargo is quite a delicacy. And then she gets these fake meat things, like phony bologna. Have you seen this? It's bologna or ham or turkey, but it's not really any of those. It's made of soy or wheat gluten. And so she gives my dad these vegan sandwiches. And she'll give him a veggie hot dog, veggie burgers and whatnot. You'd think he might have figured it out by now, but he's been quite happy. And I now have 2 vegetarian parents, but only one of them actually knows it. So anyway. The point of all this is you may have a family member, or you yourself may have a taste for hot dogs and burgers and bacon and sausage. And if so, just test out the vegan versions of them, which they now sell at the regular grocery store. Some of them taste like cardboard, others are very good. And so you just try out different ones and see which ones you like. So you don't have to have them, totally optional, but I use them as a transition. Okay? So I have some resources that I'm just going to mention real quick. Our website, pcrm.org. That stands for Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. It's a group I started in 1985 to promote preventive medicine, to do research studies, to argue for more ethical research, to lobby on Capitol Hill, to sue the bastards when you have to, when I'm talking about the fast food chains that will not tell you what's in their food. We've got a number of books, and we have them outside. Let me just mention, I don't take a royalty from anything here. Every book that you get goes to support the work that we're doing. So we do take cash checks, credit cards, blood samples, internal organs. Buy 6 of them, give them all away, please. The newest one is this Kickstart book, which has everything I've talked about today. And if you want to, go online. We have a Kickstart program online, which is, any of you done this? It's the funnest thing. What you do is you register, and it's totally free. You register it on that website. Every day I send you an email, and I'll say, get ready, we're about to try this diet. Then the next day I send you another one that says, try these menus, try these recipes. Then the next day I send you another one that says, here's a little cooking class you can look at. And every day you get embedded videos, menus, recipes. And on the Kickstart day, Alicia Silverstone sends you an email, or Bob Harper from The Biggest Loser, or we have celebrities and athletes and doctors that we work with, and every single day one of them sends you a little cooking video, a little pump you up kind of thing. And at any given time I have about 20,000 people doing this. And they have a message board. So how am I going to get through Thanksgiving? You put that question in, and you get, in 45 minutes, 30 people say, here's how you get through Thanksgiving. I have a dietitian who monitors it. It's all free. So we're doing one now. We're just finishing up a 21-day program. And the next one is going to be New Year's. So please jump in with me. We're doing Kickstart China in Mandarin in March, and Kickstart India in November, and Spanish language Kickstart late next year. The last thing I just want to say is I want us to get healthy for us. But there's a bigger thing that we mustn't lose sight of, and that is our kids. Our kids today are in, as I said earlier, uncharted territory. Childhood obesity is at its absolute worst ever. It's partly because we're busy and we didn't really know maybe what was best. It's partly because schools don't have the budgets that they need. It's partly because schools are used as a dumping ground for commodities when their prices get low. Cheese and meat get bought up and are put in schools. and their menu is distorted. And it's partly because kids' taste buds have been seduced by McDonald's and by Burger King and Pepsi-Cola. And when they turn on the TV, half the commercials are for snack food. The other half of the commercials are for medicines to undo the effects of the snack foods. And that's the world that somehow got invented. And it wasn't like that when we were kids, but it's that way today. And it's getting worse, year by year. And it's not going to change. It's not going to change. Right now, the Farm Bill is being debated on Capitol Hill. And let me tell you, the people who want subsidies for high fructose corn syrup and for feed grains for cattle, they are very well organized. But the number of worried parents and worried doctors and nurses and teachers is bigger than all the folks in agribusiness who are profiting. The problem we have is that we are silent. We're not organized. We've got other things that we're thinking about. We don't have to be full-time activists, but we do at some point have to pick up the phone and call our member of Congress and say, I count and my family counts. Then we need to change this. We need to prioritize the health of our loved ones. If we don't have that, we don't have anything. And if we speak loudly and clearly, we'll revolutionize the health of this country. Thank you very much.